Kusuzambo and welcome to Bhutan e-learning project. I'm Rinchin Wongmo, a teacher of Phuntsho Pelri Primary School under Samse Dzongkhag. This lesson is for Key Stage 2, classes 4 to 6 mathematics. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to draw bar graphs, pictographs, double bar graphs, line graphs, and stem and leaf plots. And you will also be able to interpret and draw conclusions from them. So children, are you ready? First, let us look at this letter M, which is drawn using colorful counters. Do you see this letter M? Good. And can you tell me what colors do you see in this letter M? Yes, you can see red, green, blue, and yellow. Very good. Now, can you look at this letter M and count how many counters are there? How many counters are there? There are 15 counters. Very good. Now, looking at this letter M, we are going to draw a table, which will help us to draw a pictograph. So remember children, whenever you draw a graph, be it pictograph, bar graph, double bar graph, or a stem and leaf plot, a table will always help you to draw it better. So, now let us look at this side. Here I have the table. And let us fill this table by looking at this letter M. This letter M have 4 different colors. We will count one by one and fill this table here. So let us first look at the red color. Can you count how many red counters are there in this letter M? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 6 counters making this letter M. So where you will write number 6? In the first row where you have red. So next to that one you will write number 6. Let us look at this letter M again. What color do you see? You can see green. Can you count green? 1, 2. How many counters are there? You can see 2 green counters. So where you will put 2? In the second row where it is written green. Alright. Now let us look at the next color. What is the next color there? Blue. Can you count blue counters? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, there are 4 blue counters. So put it here in the table next to the row which has written blue. Alright, the last color. What color is being left? Yellow. Can you count yellow counters? 1, 2, 3. So there are 3 yellow counters. So put 3 here in the table next to yellow. This table will help you to draw a pictograph. So first tell me what comes to your mind when I say pictograph. The word picto means picture. So that means you will have pictures in your graph. Let us see how you are going to put this table into a pictograph. Can you look at this graph? This shows a pictograph. Why do you think this graph is called pictograph? This graph is called as pictograph because it has pictures. Alright, now let me explain this pictograph one by one. So when you draw a pictograph, you need to have a scale. The first thing is a scale. You need to choose a proper and appropriate scale for your pictograph. And the second one that you have to remember is when you use the pictures should be of equal size. And when you put the pictures in the graph, all the pictures should be arranged in a proper row and column. Look at this pictograph. You can see circles. I have used circle to represent the information in this table. So, what scale did I use? Can you see the rectangle written below the graph? That rectangle shows the scale. And the scale I have used is 1 circle equals 2 units, which means 1 circle means 2. Look at the red color. How many circles do you see there? You can see 3 circles there, isn't it? Why did I use 3 circles there? Can you come back to this table? There were 6 red counters. To show 6, we are using 3 circles here, which means 1 circle is equal to 2. Therefore, 3 circles shows 6 counters. Look at green. For the green, we have only 1 circle. Why? Because you have only 2 green counters in the letter M. What about the blue one? We have 4 blue counters in letter M, isn't it? So we will have only 2 circles in the graph because 1 circle represents 2 counters. So a total of 4 blue counters. Now let us look at the yellow color, which is half. You can see a half circle there, isn't it? Why do you think it is half? Let us go back to the table and see how many yellow counters were there. How many yellow counters were there? There were 3 yellow counters. So 1 circle represents 2 counters, and to represent 1 counter, we need to make the circle into half. So that's why in the yellow you see that there is 1 circle and a half circle, which shows a total of 3 counters. So that is all about a pictograph. And you have to remember, while drawing a pictograph, you always need to have a title for your graph, and you have to always remember to arrange the pictures or the shapes you use to represent the graph in a proper row and column. Arrange them in a proper row and column. And third, you always need to have a scale for your graph. And the last one is you have to have a proper table. If you don't have a table, you will not be able to draw a proper pictograph. Well, children, that was about pictograph. Now we are going to move into the next type of graph, that is called a bar graph. What is that called? A bar graph. Now, bar graph is also like a pictograph. Why? Because even in the bar graph, you will have the informations or the data values illustrated using pictures. So in pictograph, you have pictures, but in bar graph, you will have bars to show the data values. Look at this one. Do you see this graph here? This is what is called a bar graph. Remember, whatever graph it may be, you always need to have a table before drawing a bar graph. So let us take the letter M and its table and use it to draw a double bar graph. The same table can also be used to draw a bar graph. This is a bar graph. You can see there are no pictures in this graph, but what you can see is the bars representing the data values. For red, the bar goes up to 6 because there were 6 red counters, and the bar for green goes up to number 2 because there were 2 green counters, and the bar for blue color goes up to number 4. The reason? Because there were 4 blue counters, and the bar in the yellow goes up to number 3 because there were 3 yellow counters. Unlike the pictograph, in bar graph you have two axes, the x-axis and the y-axis. The x-axis carries informations like color, days, months, which are fixed. Okay, and in the y-axis it carries informations like numbers, temperature, precipitation amount, etc., which are variable. That means along the y-axis you will have the variable information, and in the x-axis you will have the fixed information. All right, so similar to pictograph, this bar graph will also have a title, and you have to always remember to level the axis, the x-axis and the y-axis, and you have to have a proper scale. The x-axis in this graph is showing the color, and the y-axis shows the number of counters in each color. All right, so I hope you understood about bar graphs as well. Now let us see how to interpret bar graphs. Look at this bar graph. This bar graph is drawn horizontally. The earlier graph was vertical. This graph shows the temperature in 5 different places: in Thimphu, Samsi, Trashigang, Mongar, and Wangdi. So out of the 5 places, by looking at this bar graph, which place do you think is the warmest? Which one do you think is the warmest? Which place? Samti, isn't it? Samti is the warmest out of these 5 places, because you can see that the bar of Samti is the tallest, or it is the longest. And which place do you think is the coldest? Which one? Look at this graph and tell me which place out of the 5 is the coldest. Thimphu, isn't it? Reason? Because you can see that Thimphu has the smallest bar. So that means that Thimphu is the coldest place. By looking at the graph, we have already finished interpreting the graph in 2 ways. Now, it doesn't mean that you can draw only 2 informations from a graph. You can draw many information from a graph. Look at Thimphu and Wangdi. Which Tsongkhag do you think is warmer? Wangdi or Thimphu? Wangdi is 4 degrees Celsius and Thimphu is 1 degree Celsius. So, since Wangdi has longer bar than Thimphu, we can say that Wangdi is warmer than Thimphu by 3 degrees Celsius, or you can say Thimphu is colder than Wangdi by 3 degrees Celsius. So these are some of the ways you can use to interpret a bar graph. Remember, these are not just only the ways to interpret a graph. You can interpret in so many different ways, like the way I did. All right? Now it's time for another graph. The earlier we learned was bar graph, and the one we are going to learn is double bar graph. This graph is called a double bar graph. Why? Because this graph has double bars. That means there are 2 different informations being compared at a time. So this is an example of a double bar graph. Similar to bar graph, this graph or this double bar graph or any other bar graph, double bar graph will have the labels in their x-axis, y-axis, and the graph will never exist without a title. So you will always need to have a title for your graph. Look at this graph. You can see 2 bars, a darker bar and a lighter bar. Now, this is a double bar graph. What did I say earlier? Before drawing any graph, you need to have a table. right? So similar way, for this graph also you need to have a table. Look at this side. This is the table that we are going to use for drawing this double bar graph. Now this table shows the information of boys' favorite color and girls' favorite color. So out of the four colors, blue, orange, red, and other colors, which of the color the boys chooses as favorite and which of the colors do the girls choose as their favorite. So the information is given here. You can see 20 boys have chosen blue as their favorite color, and 15 boys have chosen orange as their favorite color, and 15 boys have also chosen red as their favorite color, and only 10 boys have chosen other color than red, orange, and blue as their favorite color. Look at the girls' table now. 30 girls have chosen blue as their favorite color, 10 girls have chosen orange as their favorite color, 18 girls have chosen red as their favorite color, and only 2 girls have chosen other color than blue, red, and orange as their favorite color. Now this information we are going to put in the double bar graph. This double bar graph is drawn by using this information given in the table. You can see there are two colored bars here, the lighter colored one and the darker one. So the darker shaded bars shows the number of girls who chose that color, and the lighter shaded bars shows the number of boys who chose that color. Now this graph also has the x-axis and y-axis like the bar graph we saw earlier. The x-axis here represents the colors blue, red, orange, and the other colors. And the y-axis shows the number of boys and the number of girls who chose those particular colors. And what title do you see for this graph? You can see that the title of this graph is favorite color. So always remember to have a title for your graph, to label the x-axis and y-axis of the graph, and when you draw a double bar graph, you should use different shades to represent different categories. Like here we have boys and girls, so we use darker shade for girls and lighter shade for boys. Alright, so this is how you draw a double bar graph. Now let us see how we are going to interpret this double bar graph. The first conclusion that you can draw from this double bar graph is that maximum number of boys and maximum number of girls have chosen blue as their favorite color. But out of boys and girls, more number of girls have chosen blue as their favorite color. You can see the bar for girls is taller than the boys, which shows that the more number of girls have chosen blue than boys. And the second conclusion that you can draw from this graph is that there are more number of boys who chose other colors than blue, orange, and red as their favorite color. The number of boys who chose red and orange as their favorite color is same, but the number of girls who chose red color as their favorite color was more than the number of girls who chose orange. So this four informations you can draw from this double bar graph. Now, while drawing a double bar graph, you have to remember few things. The first one is you have to use different shades to show different groups. For example, in this double bar graph, you used darker shade for girls and lighter shade for boys. So it is not always that you have to use lighter and dark, but you can use other colors like blue, pink, red, or whatever color you want to use. And the second thing is that your graph should always have a title and your graph should always be labeled, which means you should have a label in the x-axis and the y-axis. Now it's time to learn about line graph. What is a line graph? A line graph is a graph in which the points are connected by a straight line segment. Unlike bar graphs and double bar graphs, you don't have bars in this line graph. What do you have here is the line segment which connects the points together. Can you look at this graph? This is called a line graph, and every line graph will have trend. Now, what is a trend? Trend is a change over a period of time. What is a trend? A trend is a change over a period of time. This graph shows the precipitation amount in a year. Precipitation means the amount of rainfall. So this graph will tell you in which month there was more rainfall or in which month there was less rainfall. So in this graph, you can see all these points are being connected to each other by line segments. So first let us see how this graph has been drawn from a table. So this was the table. This table shows that in January there was only 4 millimeters of precipitation. In February there were 9 millimeters of precipitation, and similarly March there were 16, April 22, May 24, June 41, July 75, August 72, September 34, October 15, November 4, and December 2 mm of precipitation. So this information from the graph have been plotted here in the graph. Now let us see how to plot this information in line graph. So this is the line graph that you will get by plotting this information. This graph shows the precipitation amount in a year from January to December. So you can see that the precipitation amount have gradually increased from January, and it has been continuously increasing until it reached the maximum precipitation, that is in July, which was 75 mm. And after that point, the graph is gradually decreasing. That means it shows that the precipitation amount has also gradually decreased after July, and when it reached December, the precipitation amount have reached only 2 mm. So this is what the trend of this line graph says. What does the trend of this graph says again? It says that the precipitation amount have been increasing gradually until it reached July, and after it reached the maximum point in July, then it gradually started to decrease, and in December it reached 2 mm of precipitation. So that is how you read the trend of a line graph. Now we are into the last segment of our session, which is about the stem and leaf plot. A stem and leaf plot because the data will be arranged in a stem and a leaf form, which looks like a tree. This information shows the precipitation amount in 1 year. Now what do you have to do is you have to first arrange this data from least to greatest. So when you arrange this from least to greatest, you will have two 4, 4, 9, 15, 16, 22, 24, 34, 41, 60, 72. So now we have arranged the data in ascending order, which means from least to greatest. Now after arranging it from least to greatest, you have to put it in a stem and a leaf form. So what is a stem? So the stem will be tens in this case because the datas are having only places ones and tens. So our stem will be tens and our leaves will be ones. So look at this side. This is a stem and leaf plot for the information on this side. So you can see the stem is 0, which means 0 tenths, 1 means 1 tenths, 2, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths, 5 tenths, 6 tenths, and 7 tenths. So in the first one, the 0 tenths, the numbers we have in the 0 10 is 2, 4, 4, and 9. So in 0, we will write the numbers from 0 to 9. In the 1/10, we will write the number from 10 till 19. In 2/10, you will write from 20 to 29, and third, 30 to 39, fourth, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and similar way the other numbers. So let us look at 1. In 1, 1/10, if in the stem 1 you have number 5 and 6, because remember we had the data value 15 and 16. So 15 in the 1/10, 5, so you will have 1 in the 10 stem, and you will write 5 in the leaf and 6 in the leaf. You have number 22 and 24, so you have 2 in the stem. You will write for 22 you will write 2, and for 24 you will write 4. The third, you have number 34. You will write 34 in the third stem, which is 30. So you will write the number from 30 to 39 in this one. Alright, so similar way, you will put the other numbers in the stem and leaf plot. Now you can see that the stem 5 is empty. What does that mean? That means that there is no number which is in 50s in this data. So that's why it is empty. You can see that there is 0 in the 6/10. That means that there is one number which is in 60s, and that is 60. Alright, so this is the information that you can get from this stem and leaf plot. Now let us look at how to conclude from this graph. So the first conclusion you can draw is that there are 4 months which have precipitation amount from 0 to 10. That means 2, 4, 4, 9 is showing 4 months, which means that 4 months had precipitation amount from 0 to 10. And 2 months had precipitation amount from 10 to 19. And in 5 you have no data, so which means none of the month has precipitation amount from 50 to 59. Alright, so this is the conclusions drawn from this stem and leaf plot. Now that's all about the stem and leaf plot. You can use one information or one data set for drawing all these type of graphs. So here is a question for you to do it at home. This question is about the number of students in classes PP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So by using this table, you have to draw a pictograph, a bar graph, a line graph, and a stem and leaf plot. So do this at home. So my dear children, wash your hand, stay home, and stay safe. Thank you for listening.